But the truth of the story is about Seki, a student who always only focuses on his own work during class hours. And when Rumi saw him pulling out a pile of erasers, Rumi advised Seki to concentrate on listening to the teacher's lecture. But Seki ignored her and signaled for her to be quiet. And Rumi was extremely surprised to see Seki making dominoes with erasers. While intently watching Seki play dominoes, Rumi was scolded by the teacher for not paying attention in class, and inadvertently caused Seki to drop an eraser onto the domino chain on his desk. But luckily, Seki managed to stop them from falling down. Seki blamed Rumi for causing the incident during class time while he was playing. And he continued sitting and building dominoes until he made a structure like this that could collapse. Rumi was very worried when she saw the last domino in the line was a firework. But before she could stop Seki, he knocked over the first eraser and the rest of the erasers fell down until they hit the trigger to activate the fireworks. Thinking the fireworks would explode, it turned out Seki was just imagining the explosion in his head. And Rumi was scolded by the teacher again, so she complained to Mr. Seki. But Seki quickly cleaned up all the erasers on his desk. The next day, Seki brought a shogi board to class. Rumi was very surprised when she saw him drawing an entire chessboard right on the table. Seki calculated every move for his own chessboard. But for some reason, his king broke into two pieces just after starting the game. And it turned out the king was betrayed by one of his generals. Not stopping there, that traitor put on the king's crown to kidnap him. Some of the loyal generals called for their troops to fight against the traitor. But they quickly fell into our hand traps. After taking command of the army, the traitor led his forces to attack another country. But all of our Han soldiers were completely surrounded by the enemy, so the Han had to abandon their allies and flee alone. However, the old king was still alive and went to the battlefield to rally the troops against the invaders. But the traitor returned to continue stealing the king's throne. Rumi, sitting beside him, was furious at the traitor's actions and used a piece of chalk to shoot the traitor's general out the window to save the king. However, Seki was very angry at her for interfering while he was having fun playing and suddenly being interrupted. This time, Rumi was surprised not to see Seki bringing any toys to school. But upon closer inspection, she noticed that Seki was cleaning his desk and had even brought a pile of cleaning supplies, as if he were a professional cleaner. First, Seki would remove the long-standing stains from the desk, and then continued polishing the surface until it shone so brightly it could be used as a mirror. However, after cleaning the board thoroughly, Seki had nothing to do, so he asked to polish Rumi's board too, but she refused because she didn't want her board to become like Seki's study mirror. Seeing Seki sad for having nothing to do, Rumi pitied him and lent him her board to clean until it shone brightly enough to be used as a mirror. But the static from polishing so much caused their hair to stand on end. The next day, Seki brought a set of checkers to class to play. And since she didn't know the rules of checkers, Rumi was certain that today she could focus on the teacher's lecture. However, for some reason, after playing, Seki ended up with images of a bear and a rabbit. And Rumi saw the bear fighting with the rabbit, making her wonder if professional players play checkers this way. Despite trying to focus on the lecture, Rumi drew the bear and the rabbit in her notes. And after intense concentration, Seki made the two creatures combine into one. While intently watching Seki play checkers, Rumi was reminded by the teacher for not focusing, so she reported Seki to him. But when did Seki clean his desk so thoroughly? Rumi had to show the teacher her drawing as proof, but he only thought she was doodling in her notebook instead of doing homework. Today, Seki brought a small knife to class to carve something on his eraser, and Rumi saw him making a stamp with his name on it. Then, Seki sharpened the stamp into a cylinder shape and hid it inside an eraser so that from the outside, it looked just like an ordinary eraser. However, the neighboring boy mistook it for a real eraser and borrowed it, causing both the eraser and Seki's name stamp to break into pieces. Seki was very sad when his carefully made stamp was ruined by the other boy. And because Rumi was focused on watching Seki work, she didn't have time to copy down the teacher's lecture. Seki's school will organize a drill for earthquake soon. But Seki paid no attention to the teacher's instructions and only focused on playing with his robot, and he even created an entire family of robots. When the school alarm rang, all the students in the class were groaning under their desks, but Seki didn't care about this drill at all. But his robots performed the drill very seriously. Then all the students had to move outside to the schoolyard, and the robot family obediently followed the instructions from the loudspeaker. While concentrating outside in the schoolyard, Seki was laughing with a friend but accidentally left the entire robot family behind, so Rumi decided she would take care of them. In the next class, Rumi let the whole robot family read books, and it seemed that Seki didn't like this sight very much. Rumi saw many classmates throwing notes to each other, and when she looked at Seki's desk, she found a pile of papers on his side. Then, Seki threw a letter from classmate Hashino to Rumi, informing her that he was currently delivering mail for the whole class as a postal service. Rumi took this opportunity to write a letter complaining about Seki constantly working on his own things in class. But her letter was returned by Seki because it was too large for the specified size, and before sending it, Seki made her provide a lot of relevant information. However, after Rumi finished providing the information, Seki closed the mailbox and stopped accepting letters, and Rumi found out that Seki had even set up an entire box for late senders. So she put her letter in there. But unexpectedly, when school was over, Seki went straight home without looking at his mail. Seki brought shogi flags to class again to play. And Rumi was extremely surprised to see him have one of the pieces fight against all the other pieces on the board, even placing a piece named Princess alongside the piece. Rumi realized this was about the familiar soldier's love affair with the princess, and the soldier is currently fighting to escape with the princess against the king's army, but the soldier was quickly surrounded by the king's troops. However, the princess arrived beside the soldier, vowing to be his wife forever. Due to his love for the princess, he managed to break free from the soldier's encirclement. But they captured the princess as a hostage to force the soldier to surrender. Rumi sat by and could no longer bear to watch the sad ending of this story. Suddenly, she picked up a chess piece from beneath her feet. She realized that the piece was actually the father of that soldier. Determined not to let the love story between the soldier and the princess end tragically, Rumi decided to snap the father figure across to save them. But this time, Seki was more cautious and used a notebook to block it. Right after that, Seki arranged all the chess pieces on the table into a solid defense line, but Rumi still knocked them down completely, and finally, the father succeeded in rescuing his son. The next day, Seki brought Len up to class to knit during lessons. And Rumi sat beside her feeling very curious, because she was also an experienced knitter of Len. However, Rumi was very surprised when she discovered that Seki's knitting was a two-ended loop. And only professional hand knitters could use this type of knitting. At first, Rumi thought Seki was knitting a stuffed frog. But after looking closely, she realized he was knitting a cactus. Looking at the cactus, Illumi suddenly felt a sweet tingle in her heart, so she asked Seki for permission to take care of it. But Seki quickly untangled all the yarn because he thought she was planning to tell on her to the teacher. Rumi saw Seki pull out a tiny golf ball, and the hole was the small holes on the table surface. Even she used tweezers to aim at the path of the ball like a professional player. The student behind, Gato, noticed that Rumi was staring intently at Seki, so she thought Rumi had feelings for Seki. At this moment, Seki was preparing to hit the ball towards Rumi's territory, and when the ball was about to go into the hole, Rumi accidentally pushed it out while passing papers behind to Gato. Seki was very upset after the incident, so Rumi sincerely apologized to him. When the two bent down to look for the fallen ball earlier, Gato mistakenly thought they were hiding there to scare each other. In today's class, Seki brought out a very cute white bear, making Rumi's hostage feel charmed by the cuteness of the bear. The white bear is using a telescope to look at something, and turns out what the white bear is looking at is the brown bear. The brown bear is trying to climb onto the back of the boy in front, and Seki is using a string to pull the bear up. Everyone below is standing very tense as they watch, worried about the brown bear and the boy who shook, causing the brown bear to fall out of the window. But luckily, Seki still had hold of the string and pulled the bear back up. Seki wants to attach the brown bear to the front boy's jacket. But the front boy turns around and looks at Seki with a bullet-eyed expression. Without studying, let others study for you instead. Rumi is very surprised, because this is the first time she has seen Seki focus on studying. But when she looks back, it turns out he was sitting to take a driving test. And right after that, Seki built his own driving test field on his desk. Seki used a toy car to do the practical test, and he drove it at an extremely slow speed. But unexpectedly, when trying to climb up a hill, his toy car flipped backward, causing Seki to fail his first practical test. However, after practicing for a whole day until he injured several fingers, Seki decided to retake the driving test, and this time he successfully passed it. Seki even made himself a homemade driver's license, but due to excitement, he accidentally held onto it, causing the teacher to think he was trying to write something on the board. Seki bribed Rumi with a driver's license, hoping she would teach him but still required her to take the driving test before giving him the license, so Rumi firmly refused to teach Seki anymore. Today, Seki's class will have an emergency first aid lesson for water accidents, and although Seki doesn't care much about this class, his grandmother Kanzabat practices it very seriously. Rumi was furious when Seki left his grandmother behind to jump into the pool with friends. So she arranged a small swimming pool for them to rest. But one of the boys picked up Kanzabat gold and threw it straight into the pool. Seeing Kanzabat stuck in Goru's hair, Rumi swam towards her. However, Seki saw Kanzabat before her. Then, Seki arranged for the three Zabats to play a gumball machine game together. And since Rumi didn't know that Seki had taken the Zabat, he was still searching for it underwater. At lunchtime, Rumi found great enjoyment looking at Seki's bento box, as she had made the hot dogs look like octopuses. But he ate those hot dogs very brutally. In the bento box, there was still a pile of other octopus-shaped sausages, and they tried to save their brothers from Seki. But Seki used a torch to pierce through 3 octopuses and ate them all at once. Rumi looked at Seki like a titan from some anime series. And this time, he encountered an armed octopus with extremely strong armor. But it was still thoroughly defeated by Seki. It seemed that Seki was full, so he decided not to eat anymore, and Rumi was very happy that 4 octopuses were still alive. However, Seki shared those octopuses with his friends and even offered the dessert of his choice, a bunch of rabbits carved from an apple. In art class, Seki brought out a paper sumo wrestling toy set, and since Rumi was absent today due to illness, Garu would be watching Seki's game. Seki had a blue sumo wrestler fight against a robot sumo wrestler, and after a tense battle, the blue sumo wrestler was defeated. However, Seki bandaged up the blue sumo wrestler completely, and now the robot sumo wrestler had an additional tank-like leg, making it easily crush the blue sumo wrestler. T sat behind and saw this scene, thinking that Seki was arguing with Rumi, which made Seki go crazy and pull out those few toy items to play with. And while confused, she accidentally kicked Rumi's chair next to Seki. Seki thought that Rumi had died from a fever and come back to remind him to study. So he quickly put away all his toys. During the projector class, Seki brought out his shogi board again to play, this time letting Japanese king pieces battle Western queen pieces, but the teacher turned off the entire screen, making the room pitch black. Rumi saw how the queen army was overwhelming the shogi formation and realized that the black queen army was hiding in the darkness to defeat the shogi pieces. Rumi wanted to help the shogi pieces, as she did before, by tapping her eraser. But with the room so dark, she couldn't see the king pieces. However, Seki didn't understand why the defeated shogi pieces had returned. And it turned out that Rumi picked them up from the floor and placed them back on the board. But Seki thought there was a ghost, so he quickly cleared the chessboard. Rumi was very pleased, as she finally managed to make Seki stop working. But her skirt accidentally got caught on Seki's chair. The next day, Seki suddenly covered his own eyes in class, and Rumi realized he was playing face molding. Seeing Seki arrange a rather ordinary face, Rumi laughed loudly in class and somehow managed to successfully create a complete face. Even Seki chose the hairstyle for this man. But he opted for a rugged hairstyle instead of a more decent one. And that man had a wife and a son. Rumi was surprised to see their child growing up day by day. Their family seemed to be living happily together. But in high school, Seki turned the boy into a gangster like his father used to be. Rumi realized that due to lack of parental love, the child had become a hoodlum and tried to blow a breath to bring the family closer, but accidentally blew right into Seki's hand. Today, Seki brought a deck of Western cards to class to perform magic for Rumi, but she insisted on not paying attention to him so she could focus on the lecture. Seki continuously performed a bunch of magic tricks to make Rumi notice him. And when she turned the next page, Rumi was surprised to see a kippu hidden inside an aso. But she became angry and crumpled up Seki's card, making him so sad that he started crying. However, it turns out why the aso card stuck to his deskmate's pants just now. While the aso card Rumi tore up earlier turned into a 6-bit card, and class ended while Rumi was still copying notes. For some reason today, Seki was wearing glasses for students and seemed very concerned about his appearance when he wore them, even trying to pose like a model. Then, Seki pulled out a bunch of glasses onto his desk and tried on several but didn't seem to find any suitable ones. The neat black looks very professional. This one seems like a famous person, while the red one resembles a superhero from the movie. Although pretending not to care, Rumi was quite uncomfortable when Seki chose glasses she didn't like. Until Seki picked the thick black ones, then Rumi accepted them, as they made Seki look genuinely professional. Despite all the effort Rumi put into choosing glasses for Seki, he never wore them again after that day. This time, Seki pulled out his book to draw a flipbook on it. And it seems he spent a lot of time on it. After finishing the drawing, Seki even brought out an audio recorder to add voiceovers for the flipbook, making it more professional and giving the impression of a professional anime producer. During break, Rumi secretly watched the flipbook with its sound effects that Seki had added himself, and she was extremely surprised when she heard footsteps and bird sounds too. Near the end, Rumi even heard an ending theme typically found in anime, but she realized it was actually from a toy airplane commercial song. The teacher called Rumi to the principal's office because her recent grades have significantly declined. And Rumi understood that the main reason was Seki constantly working on his own projects during class, causing her to lose focus. Today, the school decided to inspect all students' homework. And Rumi wanted to use this opportunity to report on Seki, but when she saw the robot family, she softened and told Seki to quickly hide them. After some struggle, Seki used a box to hang all of his toys outside the window. But the Zabot family still didn't know where to hide safely. Seki came up with an idea to have the Zabot mother and daughter hide in a bento box, while Zabot would be hung behind his chair. The timekeeper couldn't find anything in Seki's backpack, so he escaped this trouble. But he found a CD disc in Rumi's backpack. Rumi borrowed that from a classmate. However, she forgot about it because of worrying about Seki's robot family, and the teacher confiscated the CD permanently. Thank you for watching this anime video. I will leave other videos from the channel here. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications when new videos are uploaded.